So what calmed me down? Bidoma lazeh, pasak harivash. You can't write a tshuva and discover America and come up with a whole new category that's relevant to life and death. You got to stand on the shoulders of some precedent. I mean, that's basically what every tshuva is about. Tshuvas are about precedents. So I got scared. And, maybe I wasn't judging Rav Aviner properly because I thought he was coming up with this new idea, a breakthrough chiddush in the laws of Rodef. But it calmed me down when I saw that he's quoting a psak of the Rivash. The Rivash, I think we mentioned it in our last year. It was quoted by the Mishnah Lamelech, I believe, in number 15 on the bottom of page 2, is talking about a Moser. A Moser is unfortunately a Jew who is dedicated to the pursuing of Jews through the Malchus. In other words, he's constantly snitching to the Malchus so that they will put the Jew on trial. And we know that throughout Jewish history, that's why they established that bracha l'mal shinim al si sikfa. Some of our worst enemies were Jews. Ayin, Kina, Mi, Tain Roshi Mayim, and all the kinnis that deal with the Spanish Inquisition and who was at the head of the... Anyway, the Rivash writes that a Moser should be killed al shem ha'asid. Al shem sofo hunidon. Does that sound familiar to you? Rabbi said we learned this. Al shem sofo hunidon in the context of whom? A ben sorumor. And the Rivash activates the principle of al shem sofo to establish a breakthrough tshuva that we will kill a Moser, even if right now he's doing nothing. But al shem sofo. V'adayin lo mosar. Ela omer sheyimso. We're going to take him for his word. He is a self-declared Moser. He's got that, badge or identification that he, piece that he got from the Malchus. Ve'hargino somi din rodef. Now the Rivash was a Rishon, albeit a late Rishon, probably about 600 years ago. And the Rivash adds the line v'kol hakodem zoch. Unbelievable. Says Rav Aviner, v'hu adin mechabel, asher kavanoso yedua. Nobody doubts about his purpose in life. Sherotza lara. Now he quotes the Rosh. That's even before the Rivash. Shenogu b'chol tfutzas hagolo lahanish es hamoser kidei lahatzil es Yisrael hanerdofim al yodo. Umuto le'onsha afilu b'yom ha'kippur machal b'Shabbos. V'im huchsak limsar harezei horeg shema yimsar achir. Wow. The Rosh is going to have a Moser killed if he's huchsak limsar. So basically, it comes out that according to Rav Aviner, we might want to ask ourselves the following question. When do we apply the principle of huchsak and al shema asid and kol hakodim zochel hargo, even if he's not involved in a meiser adif? And the answer is, according to Rav Aviner, as soon as he's a self-declared mechabel, and that's his goal in life, he becomes, in the language of Rav Aviner, a rodef tmidi. I can't overemphasize that chiddush. He quotes a Gemara in Sanhedrin with regard to Melchemes Midjan. HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Tzvaras HaMidjanim v'kisem osam ki tzorim heim lachem. And mikan omru Chazal, habol lahargo hashkem lahargo. We have to go to battle against the Midjanim. Why? because they in the future will kill us. They have declared that they will kill us. That's their purpose. And the Meiri adds, Ritzono Lomar, Masmidim lahatzer lachem. They will continuously run and try to destroy you. That's their goal by their own self-admission. V'ein lomar, and you'll ask me the following question. Dai b'masa. If you're worried about this guy, this mechabel, killing you in the future, why don't you just lock him up, incarcerate him in jail? Says Rav Aviner on the second line of the paragraph, Lomar v'harei nisayon mar'eh, the reality has proven over and over again, shemechabel shenesarim, those mechablim who are incarcerated, mishtacharim yoter muchar. Later on, they'll be freed from Israeli jails. Ekev iskat chalifin, because of some sort of deal, some sort of trade. V'chozrim al maseyem v'yeter meretz. V'chein kotev hagon Rav Shlomo Zalman, Rav Shlomo Goren, sheyesh la'atil onesh moves lamechavlim al pi halacha. Gam achrei shenimtzaim b'beit hasohar. Wow. Status as a Rodiv continues even when they're locked up. My gosh, if they're locked up, they're neutralized. If they're locked up, then there's no Meiser Redifa. If they're locked up, then it's Yochel Atzilo Me'echad Me'ivara.
Would that mean, though, if he's a Rodev at that point, so if you happen to be outside the jail when they're bringing him to jail, you have a chiyuv to go ahead and kill this terrorist? I mean, if you're saying he's a Rodev, then everyone has a chiyuv to kill him, right?
So take a
So
look.
if I happen to have a gun and I see I'm happy to walk by the prison and he's there, I have to kill him? That doesn't make sense.
Also the person driving the
Take a look at the next paragraph.
thing,
Yeah.
driving the prison can just go behind.
Anyone who works for the prison authority has a chiyuv to kill the guy, right? I mean,
he's addressing your question in the next paragraph. Kimuvan ein hadavar nitan b'samchut shel kol echad ve'echad ela rak shel beit din o hanagat ha'uma. Lachein bechlet yesh kan avera al chugei. It should say chukei. I'm sorry, there's a typo here. Sorry, al chukei hamadina. He says the following. To answer your first question, Mr. Azaria, yes, we are in favor of killing a mechabel, even though he's neutralized. But why? Al shema asid. But there is discipline. You're not to make that decision against the Chukei HaMedina. Now, again, if I was a Satmar Chassid, well, maybe I don't even have to be a Satmar Chassid. I would say, what do you mean Chukei HaMedina? Who cares about Chukei HaMedina? But to someone like Rav Aviner, Chukei HaMedina are very critical, especially in matters of life and death. However, I would not judge you as a Rotzeach, because after all, if not for Chukei HaMedina, you did what you were supposed to do, but you're in violation of Chukei HaMedina. That's the answer to the first question. And again, I re-emphasize what I said before. Let's kill the terrorists before they surrender. Let's not wait a minute. Because once they surrender, now we get to Chukei HaMedina and the world and this and that and how they judge us, and this is a neutralized terrorist. Now about your second question, what we call the crime of passion.
Sorry, just it's not clear that a Meiser is the same as a terrorist. Because a Meiser is going against the whole community. It's not one-on-one. I don't know if I buy it. I don't see the...
A Moser is endangering every single Jew, and so is a Mechabel. The difference is that in the case of a Mechabel, in modern Israeli law, there are rules and regulations. And they don't always they don't exactly always reflect the Jewish halacha. But again, just to summarize, and this is very powerful, according to Rav Aviner, there's something called a rodef tmidi. And we can categorize him as such because he has declared his purpose in life to destroy every Jew. Sal Shem Sofa, Shem Asid, like the Rivash's Chuv in the case of Moser, we can put him to death. And Rav Garon says the fact that he's going to be locked up in a jail is not sufficient. So all that is from a halachic perspective. But there's another halacha called Dina de Malchusa, called Chukei HaMedina. And you and I might say, well, who cares about Chukei HaMedina? We're dealing with life and death. Rav Aviner says no. We cannot take the chance and risk absolute anarchy. There may be any number of reasons why the legislation of Chukei HaMedina were passed. But before we end, because I see it's getting late, I was very fascinated by the second dimension of the question of Azariah, namely, should we consider the fact that he was so swept up by emotions and passions? So that you'll see in Chelik Beis of this tshuva, which is towards the bottom of page 6. He says, "L'sarat regashot yesh makom u'mamad ba'alacha b'nidon shalanu." The halacha sees a person's emotions that are overwhelming him as a mitigating factor. And therefore the Rama paskins, with regard to Hatzolas HaNirdaf, Al Yidei Arigas HaRodev, Kol HaYochol LaHatzil B'Ever Mevar V'Lo Tarach B'Kach, Ein Bezdin B'Misano. So you remember this discussion that we had last time. The Rambam holds he's not a Rotzeach, even though he could have shot for the legs. And the Radbaz says, what's the reason for this? Why can't we kill him as a Rotzeach? But rather, Dino Mosul Shamayim. He says that Al Yidei Redifaso Hutar Domo, once the Rodef is running after you, then Hutar Domo, because Hamatzil, which might be the Nirdaf himself, Poel b'mehirut u'ba'ofen instinctively. He's not in a situation where we can expect at that split second, when he has to make a decision and implement a saving act to save the Nirdaf, that he should be cold and calculate and see, well, maybe I should shoot for the legs. The Eina Mesugal Lishkol B'Shalva Kol Pula. So imagine if this Azariah fellow, he was under the impression that he might get blown to bits. Under that situation, there's no demand in Jewish law that he should be well calculated. He's got to make a decision on the spot. And therefore, I know Mesugal Lishkol B'Sheket u'B'Shalva. L'chein lo yuchal lidrosh min hamatzil shikulim kol kach medugdakim. And therefore, it's Dino Mosul Shamayim. Only in Shamayim can they judge him whether or not he overstepped his bounds. Was he, in fact, overwhelmed with fear because he thought his life was in danger? Or was there an element of a deliberate, well thought out, cold-blooded murder? Only Hashem can know that. We can't know that. And therefore, we cannot put him to death. And this sheds a whole new light on the din of Yochel Atzilo B'Yachemei Vara. And why the Rambam says that even though he could have saved the Nirdaf without killing the Rodef, nevertheless, he is not considered Rotzeach that's put to death by Bezdin. And it's because it was a crime of passion, so to speak. I'm just using that liberally. He summarizes his final conclusions on page 7 in 2 paragraphs. And you'll see this at the end of the tshuva. Aleph, Mechabelu bechezkas rodev tmidi. Let's not miss the point here to this whole tshuva. Like I say, what's the takeaway from this tshuva? Varigoso eina nechsheves ritzicha. In the worst case scenario, you could say that because he acted impulsively, instinctively, he violated the Chukei Medina, but he's certainly not a Rotzeach because this Mechabel has the status of a Rodef Tmidi. Number two, Yesh Makom L'Tana Shetachas Sarat Rigashot Adam Chashav Et Atzmo Et Chavirav B'Sakana, that under this overwhelming and passionate emotional state, he came to the conclusion that he and his friends were in a life-endangering situation. We cannot judge him and condemn him as a murderer because we have reason to believe, or at least to suspect, that the reason why he killed the Mechabel is because he was under the impression that his life and the life of his comrades were in danger. Now, with this, we're going to conclude our discussion of neutralizing terrorists. I'm not telling you that we exhausted the whole topic, but I think we got a good feeling of like the guidelines in halachic thinking. And of course, the most radical position of Rav Shlomo Aviner, the revolution of a Rodef Tamid. Where do we go from here? I would like to suggest another topic for next week, but only if it interests you. And that is exemption from army for the sake of Torah. What are the dimensions of that statement?
The difference between war and not war.
Perhaps. I'll tell you, David, I don't want to give away the whole thing before we start. You got to give me some time. But the question I'm asking you is, does this dimension of the halachic and moral issues regarding war interest you? Does this resonate with you?
Yes.
We have something called Torasu Nasa. There are people who are dedicated Yom V'Layla to the study of Torah, and I hope that's what they're doing. And they're exempt from service. When I was a kid, I don't only Americans in my age bracket might relate to this. It was something called the 4D exemption. I don't know if it still exists. So when the Vietnam War broke out, all of a sudden the 4D yeshivas were like packed to the gills. In any event, I would like to do this in kind of like two stages. Stage number one is to look from a perspective of Chazal about the significance of going to the Israeli army. And when I say Chazal, I mean Chazal. I'm not talking about the contemporary poskim. And stage number two, to discuss the compromise shita of the Hesder yeshivas. I'm right now in Birchat Moshe, where I gave a shir. I haven't given a shir here for almost 50 years. No, okay, 45. This is my first job when I came on Aliyah. Right here. It's actually 4 kilometers closer to Yericho, but in any event, I never dreamt then that this would be such a magnificent, large yeshiva. But be that as it may, Hesder seems to be an arrangement, if you literally translate the word Hesder, that's a compromise. On the one hand, Torah study is very important. We're not going to go 3 years to the army. On the other hand, we're only going to go to the army for, let's say, in those days, it was about 1.5 years. Now it's a little bit different, but what is the ideology of Hesder? And the one who wrote a lot about this in a very profound way, since we're talking to Alon Shvut, is Rav Aaron Lichtenstein. So you may see on we put it up already, right? On the the group, the WhatsApp group, the ideology of Hesed. But I don't know if I'm going to start with that next week. I want to start with the background. So maybe I'll put up more Makoros. But again, it's all contingent on what you desire. Okay, then?
Didn't Rav Goldvik
Comment.
I don't know that Rav Goldvik wrote, but if David, you have something
He
for me,
commented, I know he commented that he said that
please
Moshe
send it to me.
Aaron.
Please, I beg you.
I'll have to find out. I remember
All
that
right, see if
30
you can
years
find
ago.
it. See if you can find it. Okay. Thank you so much, and everyone we should hear better news.